Hello everyone and welcome to this video tutorial where we will be focusing on a type of non-verbal reasoning that we're going to call codes. Okay, so what does codes look like? Codes looks like this. On the screen we've got 4 different objects, 1, 2, 3, 4, and each of those objects have a code to the right hand side. So for example, we have this object here and the code is TY. Then we've got this object, the code is WX. This object's code is LY, this object's code is TZ. But your task is to figure out the code for this object at the bottom, and we've got a choice of 4. It's either TX, TY, LX, or WZ. So let me go through this one all by myself. Okay, the trick to solving this, one thing I strongly recommend is we want to find a letter that appears in 2 or more of these objects. Okay, so for example, in this object I can see that I've got a Y, and in this one over here I've got a Y. Now both of these objects have a Y, which means both of these objects have something in common, and that thing in common is what Y is representing. Okay, so what do both of these have in common? Well, they've both got stars. However, every object has at least 1 star. Okay, they've both got a shape different to a star, but in this case they're not the same shape. So let's consider the stars. Now object 1 and object 3 have something in common. They both have stars. Now we already said that there are a different number of stars in each object, but in object 1 and object 3 they have the same number of stars. They both have 3 stars. Okay, there aren't 3 stars in this object, and there aren't 3 stars in this object, but there are 3 stars in object 1 and object 3. So Y represents 3 stars. So what I'm going to do at the bottom here is make a little note, Y equal 3 stars. Okay, I'm also going to make a separate note, and I'm going to say that the bottom letter represents stars. Okay, all right, so we know that 3 stars is represented by Y. This question doesn't have 3 stars, so we need to figure out which letter represents 2 stars. Now remember, we know that the bottom letter represents the number of stars. So if we find 2 stars in any of these objects at the top here, then we can look at the letter that represents that. So look at object 2. It has 2 stars, and we know the bottom letter is representing the number of stars, so therefore X equals 2 stars. So X equals 2 stars. Okay, so now I know that the answer to this question here must have X at the bottom, which means I can get rid of the second option and I can get rid of the 4th option, and I'm left with 2. Okay, let's keep going. Now we've considered the star, so it would make sense that we now consider the other thing that's happening in each box, and in each box we've got some sort of shape. Okay, so I'm looking for this L shape somewhere, but I can see that the L shape does not exist in any of these objects. So how am I going to find out its code? Well, let's do the trick we did earlier and find 2 letters that are shared between at least 2 objects. And we can see we've got a T here and a T here. So they have something in common. Object 1 and object 4 have something in common because they both have the letter T. We know it isn't the stars because the stars is the bottom letter. So it must be the other thing. It must be the shape. What do these 2 shapes have in common? One's got 3 sides, one's got 4 sides, so it isn't that. They are both black, and we do not have a black shape here, and we do not have a black shape here, which means T must mean black shape. So I'll write that down here. T equals black shape. However, we're not looking for a black shape. We're looking for a grey shape. We know the top letter represents the color of the shape. So let's look for a grey shape, which is right here. This shape is grey. The top letter is L. So we know that this object here must have an L at the top. So we can get rid of this one. We are left with LX. The answer is LX. Okay, so let's do another one together. But this time, what I'm going to ask you to do is pause the video, give it a go yourself, and then play when you're ready. Okay, let's have a look. So once again, we've got 4 objects, object 1, object 2, object 3, object 4. First thing I recommend is to find a letter that appears in more than 1 object. So let's go for the letter T. So letter T here, and there's a letter T here. Okay, what do those two have in common? Now, there's a pentagon in each object, okay? So we know that pentagon isn't represented by T. We need to look carefully at what is the same about these two that isn't the same about these two. And the only thing that I can see that is similar between those two is that the shape is at the top. The top of the shape is almost touching the top. Okay, so the shape is right at the top. It's not in the middle, it's not at the bottom, it's at the top. So T must mean, I'm gonna write it down here, T equals, let's write top, okay? So we also know top letter represents position of shape. The top letter is telling us where the shape is, okay? So let's have a look at our question down here. Can you see that the shape is not at the top, but it's also not at the bottom? It's bang in the middle. So we need to go back to the question here and find the object which is bang in the middle, and then we're going to be able to work out the code. And you can see it's right here, okay? The shape is in the middle. Let's look at the top letter. The top letter is S. So this question here, this object at the bottom, must have S at the top. So we can get rid of the middle two options here, and we're left with SB and SY. Okay, so we've considered the position of the shape. Now let's consider the only other thing that we can consider, and that is the color or the pattern that exists within the shape. Okay, that must be the bottom letter. The bottom letter must represent the pattern inside the shape, because we know the top letter represents the position. Okay, so if we look at our question, we can see that the diagonal lines inside are going from top to bottom. Okay, the diagonal line is getting lower. Okay, so let's have a look for it. It's not that one. It could be this one. It's not that one. And it could be this one. Okay, so we can see that both of these have the same pattern. They both have the diagonal lines going downwards, and both of them are represented by B, which means B must mean the diagonal line going downwards. So we can get rid of SY and we are left with SB. And we've got our answer. All right, so as usual, now that we've gone through a couple of examples, there is a worksheet in the description of this video, a couple of tougher ones as well. So be very observant, be very, very careful. Give those a go. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.